To start out simply, Mayor, it's been 2 weeks since you presented your budget to the City Council. Right from you, what are some of the questions that you're hearing from constituents since that address?
Well, I hear a lot of good things from constituents, that they're glad that we're continuing to invest in the things that we need to invest to make sure that we get a return for our city. You know, I think that what people have been most frustrated about in Jacksonville is that we continue to have this incredible unrealized potential, and yet we don't ever seem to be able to move beyond that. And so my job within the budget that we have is to make sure that we continue to move the city forward. We have a growing family in Jacksonville. We are one of the fastest growing cities in the entire country. I think 4th fastest growing city in the country. So when your family grows, you got more people to feed, more services to provide. So you can't starve the family because you have difficult budget years. You have to find ways to make all that work. We presented a balanced budget to City Council. We'll do that every year, and we'll spend responsibly. So I think most people have recognized that, and they're excited to actually start to see the cranes in the air, to see the grass being mowed, to see the pride that we've taken in the city by making sure that we're funding the things that have frankly been left to fall down. So if you own your own home and you have a roof that's fallen in, or you have repairs that you've just neglected to make over the years, do you go ahead and invest in those repairs, or do you wait till the house falls down and it's going to cost you double? I think that's what, you know, people seem to get that. So I think we've been extraordinarily responsible in the way that we've approached it. In terms of the money that we are taking from reserves, that happens every year. 8 of the last 9 years, there has been money that has gone in and out of reserves. We usually end up with $20 to $30 million at the end of the year that we can put back in reserves if we want to do that, or spend on other things. But we put in $76 million into reserves in 2023. What we are going to take out of reserves still leaves us with double our targeted amount of money to have in reserves. So you don't want to starve your city while you have ample dollars in reserves. We're taking one-time expenditures out of the reserves, one-time expenditures, which is the appropriate thing to do, and we're going to make sure that we continue to invest in those things that move our city forward. Now, having said that, and I talked about this during the budget address, we see looking out that we're going to have some challenging budget years. So what do? We put lean teams or process improvement teams in place to go through every single aspect of city business and say, where can we be more efficient? Where can we save money? Where can we save time? And those teams are already starting to show benefit. So we're going to do all those things we need to do to make sure that we're being as fiscally responsible as we can be. What we're not going to do is choke off the potential of this city by not investing in that which will return the greatest revenue back into our city coffers.
As I was going to ask you about the reserves, because we heard some reservations, notably from Ron Salem, so that answered my question there. We have questions from our viewers too, and
Good.
I did notice that from the CIP, the new jail was removed from that. Where does that project stand? Because a lot of people were asking about.
Well, there isn't a new jail yet.
Yeah.
I mean, that is something that we have to determine. What are we going to do in that regard? Where is it going to go? Are we going to build it? Is that going to be something that comes out of the CIP? Are we going to build it? Are we going to have another company build it and lease it back? That's what a lot of cities have done. We don't know the answers to those questions yet. We know it's going to be a big ticket item, but we don't know exactly what we're going to do with that yet. That's a process that we're still moving through. And as we do, we'll make those decisions.
And we did hear the sheriff say that his priority right now is just moving that admin building. So we see that it's multi-tiered.
Well, and let me say this too, because since you brought up JSO, you know, I want to point out that the things that we have invested in so far have already started to return back to us. This investment just that we made last month in giving greater raises to our police and firefighters. JSO has seen an 88% increase in applications to be a part of that department. We need that. That was a good investment in the future of our city, in its safety, in our police department. When we create these new fire stations, every neighborhood that we go into and create that new fire station, insurance rates go down because response time goes down. These are all issues that are multi-tiered, and you have to think about the success of not only your city, but of the people in your city. And so it's incredibly important that we continue to invest in those things that bring us the greatest return. And so I want people to understand that I'm not just looking at this year in a vacuum. I'm looking at 10 years out, at 20 years out, at 30 years out. This is what we've failed to do in the past, is plan forward to make sure we're a successful city. So I will continue to say that every year we will provide City Council a balanced budget, just as we did. We'll continue to spend responsibly, and we'll continue to have ample money in our savings account. And as it turns out right now, far more than ample. And that's great, and we'll continue to do that. So absolutely not one dime of the money in reserves is coming out of emergency reserves. We would never touch emergency reserves. That's there for emergencies. What our general reserves are there for is one-time expenditures if we have to make them, but to make sure that we have enough savings in our family savings account to sustain. And we have double the amount we have targeted for that, even with what we're taking out. So I think it's very important for people to understand that if we want what we've always had, we'll continue to do what we've always done. And that is starve the things that we should be investing in. If we want our city to be successful, if we want more revenue to come into our city, we need to invest in those things that's going to return that revenue. And every single thing that we invested in this budget are things that will have a good return for us.
A lot of questions from our viewers relate to infrastructure. I'll give an example. San Marcos notorious. We actually saw it this weekend. We've got something brewing in the tropics now. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about the importance and where infrastructure fits into the budget. I know that that was a priority for you.
Absolutely.
Still is.
Still is. I mean, infrastructure is, I would say, the most important thing that we have to focus on outside of public safety. It's so very important that we create the infrastructure that's going to prepare us for storms like any that are on the horizon. But when you have areas that are historically troublesome, you've got to make sure that you're investing in those areas to make sure that people aren't going to be underwater. That's what we're doing. That is a process that has to continue. That's another reason why that we have this this 50-year resilience plan now, to find out street by street, where are we going to flood? Where do we need to make the investments in infrastructure? That report has helped us tremendously to be able to say this is where our city dollars are going to have the greatest return, because if we wait till those folks are underwater, how much more is that going to cost us? You cannot wait to make those investments. You have to continue in a responsible way to do that, and that's what we're doing.
Very good. Just looking at some of the other questions from viewers.
Whatever,
you know how that goes.
No, you got it.
Here's a good one. What do you plan to do to remediate those homes that are still on septic tanks and well water so many years after the broken promises of consolidation?
Well, we are continuing to move forward as fast as we possibly can on removing those septic tanks, the ones that are in particularly troublesome areas, the ones that are close to the water that could cause some seepage into the water. Those are the highest priority. But honestly, that is a scenario that is taking longer than I would personally like. But it is a process it is a long and cumbersome process to take those septic tanks out. But we are continuing to move forward as fast as we can, and we've talked with JEA about the importance of making sure that we move as quickly as we can on those septic tanks. Part of that is always going to be education on our part, because neighborhoods have to agree to a certain extent to make sure that the neighborhood can all move in that direction. That's a process for us, but it is one that is extraordinarily important, given that we are looking forward to years that we're going to have worse flooding and issues with those septic tanks, even the ones that may not be on the priority list right now.
know that was a big one. Let me see. We talked about homelessness. That last Monday we talked about that, so I won't go there with that one. Now this person says JSO and JFRD received substantial proposed raises, which we knew about. What are the proposed raises for City of Jacksonville employees? Since the employees are no longer represented by a union. Do you have an answer to that?
I believe that the in this year's budget, the proposed raise was 3%. That's going to be, we're going to look at where those dollars need to go most essentially, especially for people that we think need to make more of a living wage. We're definitely going to prioritize that.
Awesome. So it's not quite budget related, but I wanted to ask, I'll quote Councilman Matt Carlucci. I overheard him say, the stadium deal was the field goal. The CBA is the touchdown. We know that the CBA is now being looked at by a special committee. You know, we were talking about helping the East Side. Homelessness was part of that, affordable housing. How hopeful are you that that CBA is going to be reached in a way that you're comfortable with, that met your goal?
I'm very hopeful. Council has been very attentive. The folks that came into the East Side really made a great case for why they deserve what we are proposing to go with there. Look, it's very important as we continue to grow as a city and as that stadium district continues to grow and the entertainment district. That's all going to vastly affect the East Side. But I want to remind folks at home that it is the East Side that gave up so much during consolidation. The East Side was made, you talk about the promises of consolidation that have been left behind. These folks have long been waiting for those promises to be kept. So not only does this make fiscal sense for our city because what we invest there will come back to us, but this is something that you know, a budget is a moral document. It's really important for those folks to get the infrastructure and to get the help that they need to be able to thrive with everything else that's happening. I'm very, very hopeful that council sees that. But I'd go further than that to the other elements of the CBA. The homelessness issue is incredibly important, obviously. We've already been through that. But when you're talking about workforce development, a lot of what has held up a lot of the development we'd like to see downtown and elsewhere has been we don't necessarily have the workforce to do some of that work. We want to make sure that we develop, that we give our citizens opportunities, but also ladders up to make sure that they can be in that workforce. That helps us in a number of ways. Again, looking out, you can't just look at today, but we don't have the workforce numbers that we need to be a successful city. That's what some of these other cities that have passed us have, the Tampas and the Nashvilles. They have invested in their workforce. We have to do that. And I think what we're going to do is the same thing we did for the folks on the East Side. We're going to have the people that really have had a stake in this, that have watched the process happen and that need those opportunities, that are going to come in and present in front of that committee. I think it's going to be very important to share with that committee and with the council as a whole why we chose the things that we chose, things that will move the margins for this city. That's what we're looking at. Big items that will move the margins. Workforce development is one of those. The homelessness situation is certainly one of those. And as I don't know if I would agree with Matt that the stadium was a field goal. I think it was definitely more than a field goal. I think it was one of the biggest things we've ever been able to accomplish here. But I agree with him that the community benefit agreement is really what will make all of it work at the end of the day. We don't want to stop short of what we need to do to make this city successful. And I think we can and will continue to present a balanced budget every single year, choosing priorities, and make sure we're doing everything we can to be as efficient as possible. But we must continue to invest in those things that will have the greatest return of revenue for us, or we remain a city of potential as opposed to a city that is actually moving forward.
Can I do one more?
Sure, go ahead.
One more.
Just one, I promise.
It's okay.
I was specifically asked to ask. River City readers.
Uh-huh.
I knew your face would light up on that one.
Yeah.
Reached 1 million?
Yeah, we're actually way more than 1 million now. Where are we, Melissa?
Sweet. We love new numbers.
Yeah, new numbers. I know that you guys love tracking it, and we appreciate you doing that.
Well, it's a really innovative.
1.7 million. So we're on track to hit
Can I take a
the
picture
stretch
of
goal. Absolutely.
If you don't mind.
The stretch goal is now 2 million.
Okay.
At this point, everything is gravy because we've hit all our official goals.
So we're very excited that people continue to grab onto this the River City Readers program. It's fantastic. We love that the kids are continuing to read. They've read all through the summer, which was a big goal that we had. We didn't want it to drop off for the summer. But at 1.7 million now, we're almost to our stretch goal of 2 million by the end of the year. But the whole purpose of this is to instill a love for reading. That's the biggest thing, instill a love for reading, but also make sure that it becomes consistent. So I think it's been a great first step. What you're going to see us move into next, as we're continuing River City Readers, is a focus on attendance. Because if we can't keep kids in school, it's tough to keep them focused on literacy and other initiatives. So the next thing you're going to see us, we're actually working with the new superintendent to roll out an attendance program and to focus on a lot of kids left after COVID and didn't come back. So we're very focused on making sure we get the kids back into classrooms. That will help those literacy numbers as well.
And we do know there's a high percentage of people inside our jail who can't read at a third grade reading level.
70% of the people inside our jails cannot read at a third grade level. That tells you everything you need to know about the opportunities that are lost when you cannot read at that third grade level. It's an incredibly critical point. So as a crime fighting initiative, as an economic development tool, as a quality of life issue, it is really a key thing to get our arms around this literacy rate. And we won't know until we actually see those numbers move, but I think it's been a great first start.